first, with Labour consistently ahead of the Tories in the polls, with many predicting an almost existential defeat for Rishi Sunak's party, have the political right lost the argument in this country? Has Britain shifted leftwards? What do you think about that? Well, let's speak to Britain's most famous political double act, the Hamiltons. Christine, of course, is a broadcaster, political commentator and author, and Neil is a former Tory MP and now the leader of the UK Independence Party. Now, Neil, you'll agree that a Labour government is most likely coming. This means the British people want left-wing politics. The right have lost the argument, haven't they?
Well, no, I think what we've seen is that both parties have abandoned their traditional ideological positions and created a vacuum right in the middle of our political system. I mean, there's nothing recognisably conservative about this government at all. They've failed at every level. All the areas where the Tories have been traditionally strong, in people's minds at any rate, control of our borders, control of the public finances, keeping taxes down, and so on. They've failed spectacularly in that department. And of course, Keir Starmer has been doing his best to dump his ideological baggage absolutely everywhere. Who can tell us exactly what a Labour government would do, even on a hot topic like migration? And if in 12 months' time Keir Starmer is faced with the small boats, how on earth is he going to stop them? He's produced no plan whatsoever. And we know that Labour traditionally has no understanding of public finances. Every single Labour government, apart from Harold Wilson's government when Roy Jenkins, who was barely a socialist then, was Chancellor, has ended up in financial catastrophe. I mean, I remember when in 1979 we had the winter of discontent, and even the trade unions were taking on the Labour government then. And the result was that we had 18 years of Thatcherite and sub-Thatcherite government. And it's the abandonment by the Tories of the basic truths which Margaret Thatcher reminded us of that has produced the catastrophe of their position today.
But Neil, I'll come to you in a moment, Christine, but Neil, if the public wants a proper Conservative government, why are they about to vote Labour in their millions?
Well, I don't think that they are. There's no evidence that there's a positive shift of opinion towards Labour. What's happened is that the don't knows, don't cares, and people who've given up hope of any major political party providing them with what they want. And that's what's happened. The political class collectively has failed this country most spectacularly. Brexit, what have the Tories done with Brexit? Absolutely nothing. First of all, they spent the first couple of years under Theresa May after 2016 trying to undermine it and block it altogether. Then we had a brief interlude of Liz Truss. Then Rishi Sunak has been, Captain Sensible, doing absolutely nothing, which is going to work anyway. So they've handed over to quangos like the Bank of England the responsibility for some of the major decisions like inflation. He's now crowing over halving inflation. The government has no control over inflation whatsoever. They've handed control of monetary policy to the Bank of England. What we need to do is take power back from these technocrats and hand it to the people who represent ordinary voters. And nobody is proposing that apart from UKIP.
Now, Christine, I take Neil's points, but it looks like we're going to have a Labour government. Why will enough people be voting Labour next year to send Keir Starmer into number 10? Why is that happening?
Well, it's a very good question, and goodness knows. But I think you'll probably find there'll be quite a low turnout. What depresses me about basically politics and the whole of the post-war era is that every time Labour gets in, they put forward their agenda, they push through their agenda of socialisation and privatisation, the reverse, nationalisation, etc. Yeah. When the Tories get back in, they never, ever turn the ratchet back again. And the only person who's done that is Margaret Thatcher. Other Tory prime ministers, they get in there and they think, OK, we've got the status quo. Let's not even try and reverse it. So we've had this creeping socialism, the reason why people aren't going to vote for the Tories is because they're not Tories anymore. And I blame David Cameron for a lot of this. He's got his problems at the moment on this Rwanda bill. And the Tory party is split into all these factions where their great secret weapon always used to be unity. That has gone. And why are they so split? Because an awful lot of Tory MPs are not really Conservatives. They're Social Democrats. And when Cameron was Prime Minister, he got control of the selection process, and constituencies were no longer able to choose who they wanted. They had somebody parachuted in to represent them who was approved by central office. And so they've got a whole load of Social Democrats in the party. And of course, they're not going to want to vote through Conservative measures. So really, the parties can only blame itself. And I think people at the election, I don't know, they've just had enough. They'll vote for change. I mean, I don't think Starmer is going to be much of a change because we've had a social democratic government for a while. So it'll be very interesting. And of course, what will happen is that every person who is interested in politics will have a look at their own constituency and they'll think, what can I do with my vote to have an impact? I mean, we live in a rock-solid Tory seat. If there was one Tory left standing, unfortunately, it would be ours. So there ain't no point in trying to dislodge him. You're not going to do that. But a lot of people are living in marginal seats, and I'm sure there will be analysis when we get nearer to the election of which these seats are and who these people are. They are the ones who will have a real difference.
I mean, the real tragedy, I think, is that people like Lee Anderson, who does offer a real alternative to the Labour Party, having been in it himself, are going to be the victims of the technocratic globalists who've taken over the Tory party and have actually robbed it of any real political meaning. You know, there's maybe 3 or 4 dozen Tory MPs who'd be worth voting for in this coming election. But sadly, they will be swept out with the tide. It'll be nothing to do with their own personal worth whatsoever. Quite the opposite. In fact, they'll be swept out in spite of the value that they bring. And that's what we need to do, actually, is to restore conservatism to the Conservative Party, because they're faced with an alternative, which is just a political vacuum. You know, Keir Starmer stands for nothing. He's a man without any kind of personality or charisma. And whatever political beliefs he had, he's been jettisoning as quickly as he possibly could in a kind of Boston Tea Party of dumping ideological baggage overboard. So the Labour Party are going to find when they get into office that they haven't got any rudder to their own small boat. And so they'll end up on the rocks as quickly as possible.
Listen, you're very, very clear and trenchant in your views. Of course, it's all to play for at the next election, in which UKIP will be participating. More power to you in that endeavour, Neil. Christine, a quick word on Prince Harry. He's been judged to have been a victim of phone hacking by Mirror newspapers. He's received an award of £140,000 in damages. The News of the World was shut down after they were exposed as hacking phones. Should the Mirror be closed down too?
Well, I'm not remotely surprised that this decision has gone in Prince Harry's favour. Can there be anybody who really thought about it, who thought that the Mirror weren't hacking him? Of course they were. Neil and I were the beneficiaries of a nice little cheque, thank you very much, from all that News of the World business. When was it? About 15 years ago or something. So, I mean, if they were hacking us, you're sure as damn they were hacking Harry. Should they be closed down? Well, frankly, why not? Who'd miss them?
It was Rupert Murdoch's decision to close the News of the World, of course. He didn't have to close the newspaper down.
I think that's right. I actually miss it. I think it's a shame that the News of the World has gone. Finally, listen, I don't want to get in trouble with producer Sophia. Yeah, go for it, Christine.
Well, I'm just going to say, I mean, obviously, I don't really mean that. I do believe in a free press, and the more newspapers we have and the more media outlets, thank goodness for GBNews, the better. So, no, I mean, I'd like to see the Mirror live to fight another day, but they have to pay for what they've done. And it's undoubtedly, it was plain as a pikestaff, frankly, that they were hacking Harry.
No, I agree, and I totally agree. I think the Mirror should stay. But as you say, they've had their day in court and they've got a major bill to be paying right now. Listen, briefly...
It's peanuts, Mark. It's peanuts to the Mirror. This is why newspapers know that they can overstep the mark in all sorts of things, because what's 140,000 to them? I know they've got legal bills on top, but it's peanuts.
The legal costs will have been many times the award of damages, but as a practising barrister myself, I can only applaud that.
Too right. Listen, before you go, it's that time of year. Everyone would love to know what the Hamiltons get up to at Christmas. So if it's not rude to ask, do you have plans? Christine, what's happening on the 25th?
We do have plans. We have a wonderful invasion of family. We're going to be 12 in the house for the best part of a week, which is quite a challenge for the main cook. I do have help from others, but basically I'm in charge. We've got 3 children and a baby, so it'll be the most wonderful Christmas. And we do all the traditions that Neil and I grew up with. We have our fairy on top of the tree. We have turkey. We do all the corny Christmas traditions, because I want the young in our family to carry those on. And the only way to do that is to show them how it's done.
And I'm going to self-identify as a child in the hope that Santa's going to leave something for me.
Well, I'm sure his sack is bulging. I wanted to ask you about the cooking. Is it your job to stuff the bird, Neil?
I think. Well, there was a time, but I think I've gone beyond that now.
Stop it!
Family show. Listen, can I just say I've enjoyed so much being on air with both of you this year. You've made a massive contribution to Mark Dolan tonight, Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, and all of the shows on GB News. You're fabulous people, and I wish you a happy Christmas and a happy New Year.
Thank you very much, and the same to you and all the viewers and
Brilliant
listeners
stuff.
and listeners.